I started to learn the guitar at the age of 13. It was 2003, and looking back, a pretty interesting year for music. Linkin Park released their second studio album Meteora. The darkness exploded onto the British music scene, releasing their debut album Permission to Land. Amy Winehouse was still with us and released her debut album Frank, as well as many others from Bowie to Beyonce, Muse to Madonna, Evanescence, Kings of Leon, the White Stripes, you get the idea. All the nostalgia aside, it definitely felt like a simpler time. We were still in the early days of the internet before anyone really knew what social media was, even though 2003 was the year that MySpace first launched. But with no YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, there were fewer resources back then for a new guitar player like myself to learn from. But there was one thing that was actually quite popular back then. Magazines. Total Guitar magazine to be more specific. I collected this magazine every single month, and it came with a CD with lots of songs on it to learn, as well as the backing tracks to practice to. It really was a great way to learn, and I actually owe a lot of my guitar playing to Total Guitar magazine. A cool section was where readers could send in letters expressing their own thoughts and feelings on anything guitar related, and the magazine would print it, and they would also reply in the issue as well. It was kind of like the equivalent of the YouTube comment section, and me picking a comment from one of my latest videos and replying in this video. Like this. You can do it, I believe in you. But one submission in particular sticks in my mind still to this day, because someone decided to write in and say that Steve Vai is incapable of playing a melody, and that he wouldn't know melody if it hit him in the face. And I'm sure if that was a YouTube comment that people could immediately respond to, that person might have eaten their words by now. But we'd have to wait till February 14th, 2005 before YouTube even existed.
Valentine's Day. Bummer.
At the time, I was a massive Steve Vai fan, and I even got to see him live in Manchester in the UK in 2005 on his Real Illusions tour, and I still have my tour programme. Steve Vai with Billy Sheehan of Mr. Big, Dave Weiner, Jeremy Coulson on drums, as well as Tony McAlpine on keyboards and guitar. What a fantastic lineup. I don't remember specifics, but I just remember that show absolutely blowing me away. So needless to say, when I read that article or that letter that that person submitted to the magazine, it definitely triggered me a little bit, because when I thought of Steve Vai's playing, I thought of this. Or even his fantastic guitar work in Bill and Ted 2. The end of that film is one of my favourite endings to any film ever, largely because of Steve Vai's guitar playing. And obviously we can't forget Crossroads. But in more recent years, something has hit me, because that person who wrote the letter had a point. To me, it's not that Steve Vai can't play melodically. It's already been proven that he can. It's more that he uses the guitar for more than just melody. He uses it for expression, which is literally part of the Oxford Dictionary's definition of music. Vocal or instrumental sounds, or both, combined in such a way as to produce beauty of form, harmony, and expression of emotion. I would argue that whilst Steve Vai's guitar playing and his music isn't always melodic, it is always expressive. And that could be in the form of the most ear-pleasing musical melodic phrases, or the weirdest noise he can get his guitar to make. It's also worth remembering that Steve Vai started his career working with Frank Zappa, a guitar player known for having a slightly less than conventional sound and approach to guitar playing.
Do you consider yourself a great guitarist?
Well, I'm specialized. What I do on the guitar has very little to do with what other people do on the guitar. Most of the other guitar solos that you hear performed on stage have been practiced over and over and over again. They go out there and they play the same one every night, and it's really just spotless. My theory is this: I have a basic mechanical knowledge of the operation of the instrument, and I got an imagination. And when the time comes up in the song to play a solo, it's me against the laws of nature. I don't know what I'm going to play, I don't know what I'm going to do. I know roughly how long I have to do it, and it's a game where you have a piece of time and you get to decorate it.
So to me, I can definitely hear Frank Zappa's influence in Steve Vai's guitar playing, more in terms of the mindset behind it as opposed to the actual style. But there's a whole other aspect to this, because music, especially these days, as weird as this might sound, it almost seems like it's less about the sound and more about the visuals. And if I had to make a list of the most visually entertaining guitar players, there is no doubt in my mind that Steve Vai would be number one. Whether it's multiple costume changes during a show to fit the vibe of a particular particular song, to lasers, LEDs, light up guitar fretboards, triple neck guitars, you name it. Audiences might not always remember the notes that he played after a show, but they're a lot more likely to remember how it looked when he played them. I saw this comment on Reddit that says, Vai can be a bad musician at times because the music you release to the public is either communicative or it isn't. In general, the audience responds to rhythm and melody, not this weird hybrid between being a virtuoso musician and a commercial rock guitarist. I don't think it's true to say that communication to an audience has to fit within the parameters of either rhythmic or melodic. I could pick up a guitar and aggressively hit an E chord. Arguably, neither rhythmic or melodic, but it was communicative because you could feel the aggression. I guess it's quite similar to paintings in an art gallery. Every single person who walks around the gallery will be looking at the pictures and they will all have a different idea of what art is and what art should be. And to me, art should just be whatever the artist wants to create, and the rest is just down to public perception. And in the wise words of fellow Manc Cal Pilkington, you've got to have your critics.
You can't have your critics. If everybody liked what you did, then you're not doing the right thing.
And in Steve Vai's Ernie Ball string theory video, he pretty much sums it up perfectly himself.
One of the greatest fulfillments that you can experience is when you touch your creative side and whatever you bring into the world is enjoyable for you. That's very fulfilling. The guitar, most of all, I've always viewed it as an instrument of infinite creative expression.
There's a really good video I saw a few years ago by YouTuber Thoughty2 called Why Modern Music is So Awful. The main takeaway is that a lot of music these days is written to be familiar. That's why there's millions of songs which share the same chord progressions, melodies. It's also that you can listen to a brand new song and it hits the part of your brain which almost already recognizes it and releases the good vibes that you associate with that sound. But as good as all that is, it once again comes down to the very simple statement that if everything was the same all of the time, it would get boring so fast. As much as music needs melody and it needs rhythm, it also needs difference, individuality, expression. It needs to raise a few questions and make a few statements. And if you don't like something, good, because there's going to be plenty of people out there who might just think it's the best thing since... Be sure as always to drop the video a comment, leave it a like, subscribe to my channel if you're new here. I make lots of guitar and music related content and hopefully I'll catch you in my next video, so thanks for watching.